Have you ever felt the weight of chasing something that keeps slipping away? A person, a dream, or a sense of validation that never seems to stay? That quiet ache in your chest, that restlessness when you realize no matter how much effort you pour into someone, they just don't see your value. It's not rejection. It's a wake-up call. It's life whispering that the man you're meant to become isn't found in pursuit, but in presence. Masculine energy doesn't chase. It attracts, it commands, and it walks away with dignity when something no longer aligns with its purpose. The truth is, chasing drains your spirit. It takes your focus from where your real power lies, within. When you chase, you say, I need you to validate me. I need your attention to feel whole. But masculine strength doesn't beg for belonging. It creates it. It doesn't need to prove its worth. It simply lives it. Every time you chase someone who doesn't reciprocate, you hand them control of your peace. You trade your calm for chaos, your purpose for temporary affection. And that's not love. That's self-abandonment. You see, the world respects a man who walks in quiet confidence, who knows that disappearing isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the art of saying, I am not for everyone and that's okay. Masculine men understand that their absence speaks louder than their words. They don't chase validation because they've already validated themselves. They don't argue for their worth because they embody it. And when something or someone walks away, they don't crumble, they rise. Because every ending to them is not a loss, it's redirection. Imagine this for a moment. Instead of chasing, you pause. You breathe. You focus on your own mission, your growth, your discipline. Suddenly, the same energy you used to spend running after people starts building you. You hit the gym not for approval, but for strength. You work not to impress, but to create. You love not to fill a void, but to overflow. This shift, from chasing to becoming, is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The boy chases because he fears being alone. The man disappears because he trusts his worth. And when you disappear, something powerful happens. People notice. The silence becomes your message. The distance becomes your mirror. Those who once took you for granted start to wonder. Not because you've manipulated them, but because you've mastered yourself. The masculine man doesn't vanish in anger, he withdraws in peace. He knows that silence is not surrender, it's strategy. It's how he protects his energy, how he rebuilds his strength, and how he returns to his path sharper, calmer, and more magnetic than before. Stay till the end of this video, because what you're about to understand can shift everything. The way you love, the way you lead, the way you live. You'll learn that chasing is not pursuit of love, it's a pursuit of loss. That when you stop chasing, the world doesn't leave you behind. It starts moving toward you. Because the truth is, masculine men don't chase approval, affection, or attention. They disappear, they evolve, and they let their silence become their loudest statement. This isn't about arrogance. It's about awareness. It's about reclaiming your emotional power and remembering that you are not defined by who accepts you, but by how deeply you accept yourself. And once that truth settles in your soul, chasing will feel foreign, because you'll realize you were never meant to run after what's already yours. When you stop chasing, you begin to see the truth of what was really happening all along. You were never running toward love, you were running away from yourself. The need to chase comes from an emptiness inside, a quiet fear that whispers, I am not enough unless someone chooses me. That whisper is a lie. You've been conditioned to believe that your worth depends on being wanted, that being chosen means being valuable. But the masculine soul doesn't need to be chosen. It chooses itself. That's where real confidence is born, not from how others see you, but from how deeply you see yourself. Every time you stop chasing, you reclaim a part of yourself that was lost in the noise of wanting. You reclaim your peace, your focus, your energy. The man who disappears isn't escaping, he's evolving. He's not hiding from love. He's learning to love himself so deeply that he can no longer accept half-heartedness. When you detach, when you walk away, when you allow silence to replace pleading, that's when you truly begin to lead your own life. Masculine strength isn't loud. It's not desperate. It's quiet. It's centered. It's grounded in purpose. Psychology calls this self-sufficiency, the state where your happiness is no longer dependent on external validation. It's what makes certain men magnetic. They radiate calm, not because they don't feel, but because they've learned to master what they feel. They've understood that emotions are meant to guide, not control. When someone walks away, They don't chase because they know love cannot be forced and attention cannot be begged. True power lies in letting go, gracefully, confidently, silently. The mind tries to trick you into believing that disappearing means losing, but the truth is the opposite. Every time you disappear from what disrespects you, you win. Every time you withdraw from drama, you win. Every time you choose peace over proving your point, you win. Because the masculine path is not about chasing what's running, it's about building what lasts. The man who disappears doesn't do it out of pride, he does it out of principle. He knows that by walking away he protects his integrity, his focus, and his destiny. Think about how much power you waste trying to be understood by those who never intended to understand. You think of the nights you've spent trying to prove your loyalty, your love, your worth, only to end up feeling invisible. That's not connection, that's chaos disguised as affection. And you don't deserve chaos, you deserve clarity. You deserve reciprocity. But you won't find it by chasing, you find it by standing still and letting what's meant for you recognize your strength. When a man disappears, he creates a void, not in weakness, but in impact. His absence speaks truth. It says, "You will not find me where respect is missing." It says, "I would rather rebuild myself alone than lose myself with you." And that energy, that quiet, grounded certainty, is what the world responds to. The universe doesn't reward the one who begs, it rewards the one who believes. The one who trusts that what's meant for him will meet him halfway. So when you stop chasing, don't fill the silence with regret. Fill it with purpose. Don't drown in thoughts of what you've lost. Rise in awareness of what you're becoming. Because disappearing is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your becoming. It's the chapter where you stop asking to be seen and start choosing to be undeniable. The masculine man doesn't chase approval, he commands respect by mastering himself. And that, more than anything, is what makes him unforgettable. There's something profoundly magnetic about a man who is no longer controlled by his need to be seen. When a man no longer chases, he shifts from seeking attention to commanding it. His silence becomes strength, his composure becomes mystery, and his focus becomes power. People start to notice, not because he's louder, but because he's still. The world feels his energy, and that energy says one thing: I know who I am. That kind of certainty doesn't need validation, it creates it. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the power that comes from knowing your worth is not up for negotiation. When you reach this level of self-awareness, something remarkable happens. The noise around you fades. The opinions, the doubts, the rejections, they lose their power. Because now you understand that external approval is temporary, but internal respect is eternal. You no longer fight for attention, you earn it through presence. The masculine man's energy is not frantic, it's disciplined. He doesn't chase connection, he cultivates it. He doesn't beg for love, he inspires it. And that inspiration comes from one simple truth: he leads himself first. Psychologically, when you detach from chasing, you activate a higher sense of control called emotional independence. It's the ability to feel deeply without losing your direction. This is what women find irresistibly magnetic, and what other men quietly admire. It's that quiet strength that says, I want connection, but I don't need it to feel whole. Because the moment you need something, it controls you. But when you want something from a place of peace, you attract it naturally. You stop forcing, you stop proving. You simply become the kind of man that everything real gravitates toward. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of unlearning years of conditioning. The belief that effort always equals love, that persistence guarantees value. But love isn't a transaction. It's resonance. It's alignment. If you have to chase it, it's not meant for you. And if it's meant for you, it will never require you to abandon your self-respect to earn it. Masculine men understand this law of energy. What belongs to you doesn't run, and what runs doesn't belong to you. When you start embodying this truth, your energy changes. You no longer walk into a room looking for approval. You bring approval with you. You no longer beg for attention. You command it through presence. The people who once ignored you start to feel your absence. They begin to realize the gravity of your silence. But by then, you've already evolved beyond needing their recognition. You've entered a state of calm confidence, where your value is so deeply rooted that no rejection can shake it, no loss can break it. And this is where true masculine maturity begins, not in chasing what's fading, but in mastering what's within. Because the man who controls his emotions controls his destiny. The man who knows when to walk away knows how to win. Every moment you resist the urge to chase, you strengthen your foundation. Every time you choose peace over panic, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you disappear from what disrespects you, you expand into the man you were always meant to become. The masculine journey is not about conquering others. It's about conquering yourself. It's about standing tall in silence, radiating certainty in solitude, and trusting that your energy will always attract what aligns with your purpose. That's why masculine men don't chase. They disappear, not to escape but to evolve. Because in that disappearance, they don't lose themselves. They finally meet themselves. The moment a man realizes that his energy is sacred, everything changes. He stops giving his time to people who drain him and starts investing it in things that build him. He understands that his presence is currency, and not everyone deserves to spend it. The masculine man learns that silence is not emptiness, it's power being stored. When he disappears, he's not retreating, he's refining. He's stripping away distractions, removing noise, and returning to clarity. This is where his real transformation begins. In solitude, where no validation exists, only truth. In that silence, he starts to see his reflection clearly. Not the version the world told him to be, but the one he's always been underneath the expectations, the doubts, and the pain. This is where he meets the man he's been running from, the man who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't break, the man who knows his worth, even when no one else sees it. Solitude doesn't weaken him, it recalibrates him. It takes the chaos of the world and turns it into direction. It turns confusion into focus, longing into drive, heartbreak into hunger. The masculine man doesn't fear being alone, because he knows solitude is the furnace that forges strength. Psychologists call this emotional regulation, but to the masculine soul it feels like peace. It's the calm that comes from no longer reacting to everything that moves. When he disappears, he learns to respond, not react. He learns to listen to his intuition, that quiet voice that always knew the truth. And that voice tells him this: not everything that feels good is good for you, and not everything that leaves you was meant to stay. So instead of chasing what's gone, he builds what remains, his purpose, his mindset, his legacy. When a man stops chasing, he stops bleeding energy. Every time you chase, you leak power. You scatter your focus. You hand pieces of your confidence to people who were never meant to hold it. But when you disappear, you pull all that energy back. You redirect it into becoming. You hit the gym harder, you study deeper, you create more intentionally. You stop asking for attention and start commanding respect, not by force, but by presence. That's the beauty of masculine energy. When you stop chasing the world starts to chase you. And the truth is, people can feel that shift. They notice when your energy no longer seeks approval. They sense when your silence isn't confusion, but confidence. They see when your eyes no longer plead, but observe. It makes them curious, drawn, even unsettled, because true strength doesn't need to prove itself, it just is. You become a mystery, not because you're hiding, but because you've mastered peace in a world addicted to noise. This is where your value multiplies. You are no longer the man who bends for attention, you are the man who stands for standards. You are no longer moved by fleeting emotions, you are anchored by purpose. And in that calm, in that disappearance, you become undeniable. You become the man who no longer runs after what's temporary, because he's too focused on building what's timeless. Masculine men don't chase because they understand one truth: the more they chase the world, the further they move from themselves. But when they disappear into purpose, everything real starts finding its way back to them. The strength of a masculine man is not measured by how much he can chase, but by how much he can control his desire to chase. The world tells him that to prove love, he must pursue endlessly, fight relentlessly, and never give up. But the truth is, the real proof of strength lies in restraint. It's the ability to want something deeply, yet refuse to lose yourself for it. That is power. That is mastery. Because when you can walk away from what you want, you're no longer a prisoner of your emotions. You're their commander. This discipline doesn't come easily. It's born from pain, from disappointment, From the countless times you have given everything only to be met with silence or indifference. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every betrayal becomes a lesson carved into your soul, not to harden you but to refine you. The masculine man learns that pain is not punishment, it's preparation. It's how the universe trains you to stop seeking validation in others and start discovering it within. The moment you realize that you don't need to chase love to be worthy of it, something inside you shifts permanently. You stop running, you start rising. Psychology calls this shift self-actualization, the point where a man starts living not to please but to fulfill his purpose. He's no longer driven by the fear of losing someone but by the hunger to become someone. Every ounce of energy he once wasted chasing is now directed into evolution. He becomes obsessed with growth, physical, mental, spiritual. His focus sharpens, his presence deepens, his confidence expands. Because now, he knows that what he builds within will eventually reflect without. There's a different kind of silence that comes with this level of strength. Not empty, not lonely, but peaceful. It's the silence of alignment, the kind where you no longer need to prove, explain, or convince. You let your results speak, your actions lead, your energy announce your worth. And people begin to feel it. The same ones who once overlooked you now see you differently. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've finally embraced it. That's the paradox of masculine energy. The moment you stop trying to be seen, you become impossible to ignore. Every man reaches a point where he must choose to keep chasing what drains him or to start building what defines him. The weak man clings to comfort, to familiarity, to validation that feeds his ego but starves his soul. The strong man walks into discomfort, knowing that temporary solitude is the price of permanent strength. He doesn't chase fleeting affection because he's too busy building eternal impact. His mind is no longer consumed by who walked away, but focused on who he's becoming. He disappears not out of defeat but out of design, because he knows that everything real grows in silence. And that's what makes the masculine man so powerful. He's unshaken by rejection, unfazed by distance, and untouched by comparison. His value doesn't depend on being chosen. It exists because he chooses himself every single day. He knows his energy is rare, his time is sacred, and his presence is a gift. So he stops running after what doesn't match his frequency and starts creating a life that does. The man who masters this truth never needs to chase again, because he finally understands. The world always finds its way to a man who no longer runs after it. There comes a moment when a man realizes that everything he was chasing was never about the other person. It was about the reflection of himself he hoped to find in their eyes. He wanted to feel seen, valued, understood. But the truth is, no one can see you clearly until you see yourself completely. And that's why masculine men stop chasing. They understand that the validation they were searching for was never out there, it was always waiting within. Once that truth hits, the pursuit ends, and the transformation begins. This is where masculinity deepens. It's no longer about appearance or dominance. It's about awareness of who you are when everything external fades, when there's no one clapping, no one affirming, no one calling your name. The real man stands tall in that silence, knowing that his worth doesn't rise or fall based on who acknowledges it. That's emotional freedom. That's power that can't be taken away, because it doesn't depend on anything outside of you. It's the kind of strength that makes you unbreakable, not because you never feel pain, but because pain no longer defines you. This understanding rewires your psychology. You start moving differently. You stop reacting to rejection, and instead, you observe it. You no longer chase attention, you attract it through authenticity. The desperate need to be noticed disappears because you've outgrown it. You've stepped into the mindset of a man who doesn't prove. He demonstrates. Every action, every word, every silence becomes intentional. You start valuing your energy like gold, because you finally understand that not everyone deserves access to it. This isn't arrogance, it's emotional intelligence. It's maturity. It's what separates men who lead from men who linger. When you no longer chase, people start to feel your boundaries. They feel that you're not available for confusion, for games, for half effort. You radiate clarity. That's why masculine men become magnetic, because clarity is rare in a world full of mixed signals. They don't beg to be chosen, they become the standard. And when you become the standard, you stop settling for less than alignment. You stop lowering your value to fit into places where you were never meant to belong. You stop chasing people who were never capable of meeting you where you are. Instead, you focus on rising, and the right ones rise with you. The beauty of disappearing is that it teaches you to prioritize your peace above all. You start realizing that your silence heals you faster than confrontation ever could. You don't respond to every misunderstanding because you've learned that truth doesn't need defending. You don't chase every lost connection because you've learned that what's real never needs to be pursued. The masculine man lives by this quiet wisdom. He knows that energy never lies and time always reveals. So he trusts the process even when it's painful. He trusts that his value will never go unnoticed by what's meant for him. And that trust changes everything. It removes anxiety, eliminates fear, and replaces uncertainty with calm focus. You begin to understand that you were never meant to chase love. You were meant to become love. You were never meant to beg for respect. You were meant to embody it. And when you live from that space, everything shifts. You stop chasing people and start attracting peace. You stop begging for validation and start radiating power. Because at the end of the day, the masculine man doesn't disappear to escape others. He disappears to discover himself. And once he does, the world has no choice but to follow his silence. The more a man grows in self-awareness, the more he understands that disappearing isn't about leaving others. It's about returning to himself. It's about stepping back from noise, drama, and validation to reconnect with his own rhythm. The masculine man doesn't disappear because he's cold or heartless. He disappears because his peace matters more than his pride. He knows that chasing is easy, but holding your energy when everything in you wants to react, that's mastery. That's where growth happens. Because in stillness, truth speaks. And the truth always says the same thing. You were never meant to chase what doesn't align with your soul. When a man truly embraces this, his life begins to reorganize itself. His priorities shift from being liked to being respected, from being understood to being fulfilled. He learns to find satisfaction not in attention but in progress. The validation that once felt like oxygen now feels unnecessary, even draining. This is the birth of emotional strength, the point where your worth is no longer fragile, where silence becomes your boundary and purpose becomes your compass. The world may call it detachment, but it's actually freedom. You're no longer moved by what's temporary because your focus is on what's eternal. Your growth, your discipline, your mission. Psychologists describe this transformation as self-empowerment, the moment when your internal world becomes stronger than your external circumstances. You stop reacting to every shift around you because your foundation is stable. You stop seeking closure from others because you've learned to give it to yourself. You don't chase clarity anymore. You create it through your actions, through your standards, through your silence. That's when the masculine man becomes untouchable, not because he's emotionless, but because his emotions serve him, not control him. He feels deeply, but he's not lost in feeling. He cares, but he doesn't collapse. This inner stability radiates outward. People begin to sense something different about you. A calm that doesn't break, a confidence that doesn't boast. You walk differently, you speak less, you observe more. You've stopped fighting for things that disturb your peace because you've realized your energy is your empire. Every time you choose not to chase, you're protecting that empire. You're saying, my peace is more valuable than your attention. And that statement alone shifts everything. It teaches people how to treat you. It filters out what's not real. It attracts only what matches your vibration. The truth is, disappearing isn't a retreat. It's a recalibration. It's how the masculine man resets his power. He disappears to think, to build, to evolve. He withdraws not because he's running away from love, but because he's preparing to love correctly, from fullness, not emptiness. He understands that when you disappear for the right reasons, you don't lose people who matter. You lose those who are only attached to your availability, not your essence. That's a blessing, not a loss. And when he returns, because he always does, he's different. Sharper, wiser, more grounded. His silence has taught him more than chasing ever could. He now knows that real connection doesn't demand pursuit, it responds to presence. Real respect isn't begged for, it's built. Real power doesn't chase validation, it creates value. This is why masculine men don't chase, they disappear to evolve, so that when they step back into the world, they no longer move with need, they move with purpose. And in that purpose, they find everything they were once chasing effortlessly drawn toward them. There comes a moment when silence becomes your teacher, when your own thoughts begin to echo so loudly that you can no longer ignore them. That's when you realize the truth. Not everything that breaks you is meant to destroy you. Some things break you just enough to let the light in, to help you see what you've been blind to all along. The pain that once made you question your worth can become the very force that helps you reclaim it. Because somewhere inside you, beyond all the noise, beyond the fear, is a version of you that's been waiting to rise. A version that doesn't settle for temporary validation, that doesn't chase people just to feel seen, that doesn't lose itself trying to be loved. That version of you knows your power. It knows your depth. It knows that your value isn't measured by who stays or who leaves. It's measured by how you continue to stand when everything else falls apart. There's something sacred about rebuilding yourself. It's quiet, unseen, and often misunderstood. People won't always recognize the strength it takes to start again, to pick up pieces of a heart that's been shattered and dare to love again, not just others but yourself. The truth is, you don't rebuild by pretending nothing happened. You rebuild by facing everything that did, by sitting with your emotions even when they hurt, by acknowledging the parts of you that you once hid out of fear they weren't enough. Healing isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about becoming who you needed back then. Someone stronger, wiser, softer, and more alive. And as you grow, you'll notice something beautiful. The things that once triggered you lose their power. The words that used to cut deep now sound hollow. The memories that haunted you begin to fade, replaced by gratitude. Not because you enjoyed the pain, but because you learned from it. Every wound became a teacher. Every goodbye became redirection. Every rejection became protection. You'll realize that nothing was wasted, not even your tears. Every moment was molding you into the person you're meant to be. There will be days when you'll doubt your progress, when you'll feel like you're back at the beginning. But you're not. Growth doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like endurance. It looks like choosing peace over chaos, silence over reaction, and self-respect over approval. It looks like waking up one morning and realizing you no longer crave what once destroyed your peace. That's the quiet victory. The kind of transformation no one applauds but changes everything about the way you live. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep moving, one honest step at a time. The path to becoming your truest self isn't linear. It's messy, it's raw, and it's real. But that's what makes it powerful. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your authenticity. It needs you, fully alive, imperfect, and fearless in your pursuit of meaning. And as you continue, you'll find that the greatest freedom isn't in being loved by others. It's in learning to love yourself so completely that you no longer seek permission to exist. You simply do. You simply rise. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes from surviving what was meant to break you. It's not loud or boastful. It doesn't announce itself with words. It reveals itself in how you move through the world afterward, in how you smile again, even after being betrayed, in how you open your heart again, even after it's been shattered. That's real power, the kind that can't be taught, only earned through the storms you've endured. People often confuse strength with the absence of pain, but true strength is being able to feel deeply and still choose to move forward anyway. It's knowing that healing doesn't mean you never bleed again. It means you no longer fear the wound. You start to see that resilience isn't about winning every battle. It's about refusing to give up on yourself no matter how many times life knocks you down. The world may never fully understand the weight you've carried or the nights you've cried in silence, but that doesn't matter, because you know. You know what it took to wake up and face another day when everything inside you screamed to give up. You know what it means to keep your heart open when every instinct tells you to shut it down. That's courage. That's growth. That's evolution. You begin to realize that self-love isn't some distant ideal or soft concept. It's a daily act of rebellion against everything that tries to convince you that you're not enough. It's saying no when your peace is at stake. It's walking away from conversations that drain your energy. It's holding yourself with compassion when you fall short. It's understanding that your worth is not conditional, not on success, not on relationships, not on anyone's approval. It's remembering that you are whole, even when the world tries to make you feel broken. There will still be moments of doubt, moments when old wounds whisper lies into your soul. They'll tell you you're not strong enough, that you'll fail again, that no one really sees you. But this time you'll respond differently, because this time you've met your own strength. You've stood in your own fire and survived it. You've learned that darkness doesn't define you. It reveals you. It shows you what you're made of. It strips away the illusion of control and forces you to build your foundation on truth. And that truth is powerful. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are becoming. Every tear, every scar, every silent night of questioning your purpose has been part of your awakening. You've been growing roots, even when you couldn't see them. You've been expanding into the person you were always meant to be. The pain you carried wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was sculpting you into someone capable of more depth, more empathy, more purpose. So let your journey be your testimony. Let your resilience speak louder than your fears. Let your scars remind you not of what hurt you, but of what healed you. You've earned the right to stand tall, to speak your truth, to shine without apology. Because you are not defined by what you lost. You are defined by what you found within yourself when everything else fell away. And that right there is the kind of transformation that changes everything. There comes a moment when you realize that the person you've been waiting for to save you has been you all along. That no one is coming to make things easier, to hand you peace, to fix the ache in your chest, because that power has always lived within you. And when that truth finally sinks in, it changes everything. You stop begging for validation, you stop chasing after love that only half shows up. You stop apologizing for outgrowing people who preferred you small. You begin to understand that your healing is your responsibility, your happiness is your creation, and your future is your design. The world will still test you. It will still whisper doubts when you start to believe in yourself. It will still try to remind you of your past mistakes, your insecurities, your moments of weakness. But that's when you stand taller. Not because you have no fear, but because you refuse to let fear lead you anymore. You remind yourself that confidence isn't loud. It's quiet self-assurance that says, I've been through worse and I'm still here. Every scar in your heart becomes proof that you've already faced the kind of storms most people never recover from. You've learned to rebuild, not from perfection, but from persistence. And that's where power is born. Not from comfort, but from endurance. From the nights you stayed awake wrestling with your own mind. From the tears you wiped away without anyone noticing. From the courage it took to start over when you didn't even know where to begin. Those moments, the ones no one applauds, are where real transformation happens. That's when your soul toughens not into stone but into something unshakable. Something that bends but doesn't break. You begin to look at your past differently. You stop asking why things happened and start asking what they taught you. You see that every heartbreak shaped your wisdom, every rejection redirected your path, every loss revealed your strength. You stop resenting the pain and start respecting it, because without it you wouldn't have discovered your own depth. Growth stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. You start thanking the moments that forced you to evolve, even when it hurt. And something beautiful happens when you stop fighting yourself. Peace finds you. The noise inside your head begins to quiet down, and you realize that calm was never about everything being perfect. It was about you finally being aligned with who you truly are. You start making decisions from clarity, not fear. You stop waiting for the perfect timing and start trusting your own rhythm. You stop needing permission to live fully, because life isn't waiting for you to be ready. It's waiting for you to begin. To take that first small step toward what you've been dreaming about. To finally believe that you're worthy of the life you imagine when no one's watching. The truth is, no one has your combination of fire, softness, resilience, and light. No one else carries your exact story, your lessons, your potential. You are a once-in-a-lifetime creation, and it's time you started living like it. So take a breath, lift your chin, and walk forward. Not because you know exactly where you're going, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. You've already survived so much. Now it's time to thrive. Not in the shadows of your past, but in the brilliance of your becoming. Strength isn't built in the moments you're praised. It's built in silence. In the invisible battles you fight when no one is there to witness them. It's in the quiet hours where doubt screams louder than belief, and you still choose to rise. That's where the masculine spirit becomes unbreakable. Not through perfection, but through consistency, through the decision to keep showing up for yourself, even when it hurts. You begin to understand that maturity isn't about what you say, but what you no longer need to prove. It's about choosing peace over validation, purpose over popularity, and dignity over desperation. When a man stops chasing what drains him, he starts attracting what aligns with him. That's not arrogance, that's clarity. You reach a point where you realize not every invitation deserves your presence, not every argument deserves your voice, not every person deserves your energy. You begin to protect your peace the way you once protected your pride. Because now you understand that your value doesn't increase when you are seen. It increases when you see yourself clearly. There's something magnetic about a man who walks away quietly, the kind of man who doesn't need to shout that he's done. He simply disappears from what no longer respects his energy. His silence becomes his statement. His absence becomes the loudest response. That kind of strength doesn't come from ego. It comes from healing, from realizing that revenge wastes energy that could be spent on growth, from knowing that distance is not weakness, it's wisdom. When you detach from things that aren't meant for you, you create space for what is. You start seeing how much of your time was spent trying to earn love that should have been given freely. You recognize how much of your peace was sacrificed for people who couldn't even handle your silence. That's when you finally understand that love isn't supposed to confuse you, it's supposed to guide you. It's not supposed to make you lose yourself. It's supposed to remind you who you are. The masculine energy thrives in self-respect. It's a force that doesn't beg to be chosen. It becomes so grounded in purpose that people naturally feel drawn to it. It's not about dominance or control. It's about direction. A man who knows where he's going doesn't need to chase anyone. He's too busy becoming someone. His focus, his discipline, his stillness, they all create gravity. The kind of gravity that pulls in respect, admiration, and peace without a word being spoken. Every time you walk away from chaos, you strengthen your control. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you reclaim your power. Every time you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, you become untouchable. That's when the shift happens, when you realize that power isn't in the noise, it's in the calm. It's not about being cold, it's about being centered. It's about knowing that chasing people is a distraction, but chasing purpose is transformation. The masculine man doesn't disappear because he's weak. He disappears because he's evolving. He outgrows what once entertained him. He outgrows the need for validation. He outgrows the patterns that kept him small. When he disappears, it's not retreat, it's rebirth. It's the moment he reclaims his focus, his discipline, and his divine calm. That disappearance isn't a loss for him. It's a lesson for everyone who underestimated his silence.